Part 13. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 128. Zhang Shiyu's words stunned everyone present. No one has calculated the total population of Wanling Kingdom. Is the woman in front of me exaggerating when she said that the prince has rescued more than 100,000 people? Master Du, what do you think of this matter? One of the officials asked with clear eyes and cupped his hands. Du Zhong glanced at everyone and returned to the old question, who do you think will win tonight? Zhang Shiyu. As expected of a veteran immersed in officialdom, her words only moved everyone a little. When faced with their own interests, they are still hesitant and weighing the left and right. Everyone shook their heads and sighed again. An official in his 50s stood up and said, I believe that since ancient times, those who win the hearts of the people win the world. King Yan'an has strong financial resources, strong soldiers and horses, and has a greater chance of winning than the one in the palace. Hearing what the man said, Zhang Shiyu felt secretly happy. This person can be the first to stand up and express his opinions. He must have a high official position. He doesn't even call himself the emperor, which shows that the balance in his heart has slowly tilted. Your Majesty, what you said makes sense. Can the rest of you tell me your opinions? Seeing that everyone was timid and hesitant, Du Zhong knocked on the armrest of the armchair and said, if we haven't made a decision before dawn, we will wait to return to our hometown to retire. Zhang Shiyu covered her lips and smiled softly. Why is Miss Zhang smiling? Asked an official nearest to him. Zhang Shiyu stood up and gave a slight blessing to Du Zhong. Uncle Du is right. You said that returning to your hometown to retire may not be possible. The prince is kind. He is a man who has been on the battlefield. He is decisive in killing. Kindness may not be universal. The implication is that if you want to be a wallflower here, you have to do it as soon as possible. It is impossible to sit back and enjoy the success, otherwise everyone will not want to have a happy death. It's already late. If you don't have anything to ask, I won't delay the adults' discussion and leave. Zhang Shiyu took a step back. Zhen Jingxiu also stood up quickly, just in time. Jingxiu will send Miss Zhang back. My dear nephew, you haven't told me what Master Zhen thinks about this matter, Du Zhong asked quickly when he saw that Zhen Jingxiu was about to leave. Zhen Jingxiu bowed his hand to Du Zhong and said, thank you Uncle Du for trusting me. My grandfather is in poor health and has been concerned about political affairs over the years. My nephew is immersed in private school all day long and has no ambition. According to my nephew's personal opinion, it is already rotten and cannot bear the heavy responsibility of Wanling. It is not a bad idea to try another one. Zhen Jingxiu's efforts completely eliminated his grandfather. He was just a scholar, so it didn't matter if he spoke boldly. Even if the throne of the Song family was saved, it would be hard for the emperor to compete with a scholar. What my nephew means. Before Du Zhong could ask again, Zhen Jingxiu handed over and left. The two of them left Du Mansion and walked back along the alley they came from. Zhang Shiyu saw Zhen Jingxiu followed by a book boy, and then she realized that Zhen Jingxiu was also walking to Du Mansion. The bright moon is in the sky, and the seemingly peaceful night is full of undercurrents. The distant sounds of fighting disappeared. Miss, look, there's a fire in the palace. Zhen Jingxiu turned around first and saw the fire lighting up the sky red. It seems to be the location of Qianqing Palace. Did the crown prince win? Zhang Shiyu's eyes sparkled. Gao Mu said, Miss, let Kang Yun escort you back, while my subordinates go to find out the news. Gao Mu was loyal to Zhang Shiyu and also cared about the safety of his son. You go with Kang Yun. Zhen's family is a scholarly family, so Gao Mu naturally believes in Zhen Jingxiu's character. The two of them accepted the order with their hands in hand, and disappeared in a flash. Zhen Jingxiu was stunned. It took a while for her to regain her composure. It turns out that the girl is being protected by such a high-level person, but it's because of her stupidity. Zhenfu has a large population and hundreds of servants. There are some servants who are good at boxing and kung fu. Compared with Gao Mu and Kang Yun, they are incomparable. The bright moonlight shines on her bright face, like the fairy Chang'e in the Moon Palace. Zhen Jingxiu was filled with doubts. Is she really the daughter of a merchant? Looking around the capital, even the Prime Minister's mansion can't find such a strong martial arts boy. Miss Zhang hopes that the prince will win. That position should be occupied by a virtuous person. The true master must have heard a rumor that Emperor Renzong once left an imperial edict for the Xiao family. The descendants of the Song family are incompetent. If the Xiao family came to protect Wanling Kingdom, it would be justifiable. Zhang Shiyu said and continued walking back. Zhen Jingxiu also followed. That's not a rumor, it's true. I heard it from my grandfather. My great-grandfather also participated in drafting the decree. The father of the great scholar Zhen was once an editor of the Hanlin Academy. Emperor Renzong trusted Zhen's family very much. Zhang Shiyu had heard a little about these old stories. Just as he was about to approach Zhang Mansion, Zhen Jingxiu stopped and said, "Grandpa and Jingxiu also have a high opinion of the prince." Zhang Shiyu smiled lightly. The true great scholar has a unique vision, which makes Shiyu admire him deeply. Zhang Shiyu still went back through Jiaomen. Zhen Jingxiu looked at the closed corner door and murmured to himself, "I also have unique vision, why don't you see Miss Zhang praising me too? Miss, you are finally back. This slave is almost dying of anxiety." Zhang Shiyu walked into the backyard and saw Qiuju walking towards her. "Why are you anxious?" "With Gao Mu and Kang Yun, I'm safe." Qiuju looked behind Zhang Shiyu. "Where are the two of them? Why didn't they escort the young lady back?" "I asked them to go find out the news. It's getting late, so you should go and have a rest." Zhang Shiyu said as she looked towards the flower hall and saw that the candles had been extinguished inside. Qiuju said, "Miss, please go in and wash up quickly. Mr. Nangong and Sui Sui have gone back to Shaihua Yuan." "Miss, there are some things that the slave should not say, but this slave is feeling panicked." Qiuju walked to the door and opened the curtain to let Zhang Shiyu in. Zhang Shiyu paused and asked curiously, "Why are you panicking? Gao Mu proposed to you." "Miss, you are still making fun of me. I am worried about you." When Zhang Shiyu entered the room, Qiuju put down the bead curtain and stamped her foot. She was so embarrassed that she was so shy. Zhang Shiyu walked to the dressing table and slowly took off the hairpin. Seeing Qiuju anxious and shy, Zhang Shiyu said hurriedly, "Why should I be anxious? I saw it when Gao Mu gave you the golden hairpin. He has almost spent all his personal money, right?" Before Qiuju could defend herself, Zhang Shiyu said with a smile, "The shoes on Gao Mu's feet were made by you, right? Don't hide them next time. One of you is unmarried and the other is unmarried. Both Lanner and Mayer can see that they are in love. Don't worry, wait a minute, you and Gao Mu are not young anymore, we will get married during the Chinese New Year." Qiuju's face was as embarrassed as a cooked shrimp. "Miss, I'm not in a hurry. I feel aggrieved for Mr. Nangong." "What? Nangong Ziyu also likes you?" Zhang Shiyu's hand shook and the comb slipped from her hand. He looked astonished. "Miss, where are you thinking? I can't help but see that Mr. Nangong is so kind to the young master. He picks him up during the day, plays with him when he comes home, and sleeps with the young master at night. Miss, shouldn't you give him an identity?" Qiuju's words were sincere. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 129. What identity? Zhang Shiyu blinked in confusion. Of course, he should be the son-in-law of our Zhang family. "Miss, don't you think that young Master Nangong is more suitable than the prince?" After hearing Qiuju's words, Zhang Shiyu laughed so hard that she couldn't straighten her waist. After a while, Zhang Shiyu stroked her belly and said, "Silly girl, Young Master Nangong is my friend. I'm really embarrassed to ask you to do something to him. Miss, have you ever thought about it? If the prince succeeds tonight, he will be the king of a country by then. Will he allow you to find a stepfather for Master Sui Sui? I'm not related to him. Even if he succeeds, he has 3 palaces and 6 courtyards, and a group of children. The front court and the harem are enough for him to be busy. He can think of Sui Sui at that time. How can he care about who I marry? Zhang Shuyu didn't think so. Men all have a common problem. When they have power and beauty, how can they care about other people's affairs? Okay, I'll leave first. Kyoju has always believed that what the young lady does and says is the truth. After Kyoju left, Zhang Shuyu changed into pajamas and tied her long hair behind her head with a hairband. Pushing open the window, the rich fragrance of Osman thus hit her face, and the fragrance was fragrant. As the autumn became stronger, she took a thin blanket and lay on the soft couch. She was tired, but still not sleepy. She couldn't sleep well before Gao Mu and Kang Yun came back. Tonight, it was not only the court ministers who were panicking, but the lights in the princess's mansion were also bright at this time. The guards sent by the eldest princess Song Yunzi kept coming back to report the battle situation. Report to the princess, the soldiers of the western suburbs camp have entered the city. Report to the princess, the Jinyue suffered heavy casualties, and rebels appeared in the western suburbs camp. Prince Xiao has ordered the western suburbs commander-in-chief to lead the troops back to the camp and wait for orders. What should I do? I have advised Song Rui, that bastard, many times. He spends all day drinking and having fun. The Song family can't keep the country. The eldest princess walked around anxiously. The son-in-law was the 3rd place winner of the imperial examination that year. Because he was recruited as a son-in-law, his official career was ruined. After years of luxury, the handsome son-in-law still retains a scholarly air. Princess, don't worry. It's too late to save the situation. Fortunately, Prince Xiao has a good relationship with us. As long as we don't interfere, he won't kill us. Song Yunzi didn't think so. She gritted her teeth and said to the prince, hurry up and get someone to prepare the carriage. I have to go to see the prince. Princess, swords have no eyes. Let's go at dawn. The prince had never seen the princess so nervous, and he became nervous too. Song Yunzi scolded, what do you know? It's too late to go at dawn. The prince entered the city so smoothly and unstoppably. He came prepared. Xiao Jingzhao has a good reputation. Song Yunzi has always known it, but the emperor didn't listen to her advice, insisted on his own way, and ignored the victims. Song Yunzi was unwilling to accept the situation today even if she was mentally prepared. After tonight, whether the princess's mansion can keep its glory and wealth, she can only gamble. Seeing the princess leading a group of people out of the princess's mansion, the prince consort's legs went limp and he collapsed to the ground. As soon as the carriage arrived outside Donghua Gate, he smelled the smell of blood in the air. Under the light of the fire, figures intersected, and the sound of swords clashing mixed with screams came. Who is it? A sharp shout. A group of soldiers quickly surrounded Song Yunzi's carriage. Don't be rude, it's the princess inside, the driver said hurriedly. Song Yunzi lifted the curtain of the carriage, and the smell of blood came to her nose. The scene in front of her made her secretly frightened. I am here to welcome the prince, why don't you get out of the way quickly? Not far away, swords flashed, and several of the emperor's soldiers were resisting stubbornly. Song Yunzi got off the carriage. A soldier saw that the lantern on her carriage was the symbol of the princess's mansion, and stepped forward and said, the prince is meeting with ministers at this moment, the princess, please move. Song Yunzi did not bring a servant, and followed the soldiers to a palace wall alone. We are late in welcoming the prince. Please forgive us. The handsome man waved his hand at everyone, what crime have you committed? If Song Rui is a wise ruler who cares about the world, I have nothing to say. What he did is infuriating to both humans and gods, and the people have seen it. Song Yunzi looked at the scene in front of her and secretly felt lucky to have made the right choice. The princess is here to welcome the prince. With a loud shout, the ministers who came to see Xiao Jingzhao finally felt relieved. Just as Song Yunzi walked towards Xiao Jingzhao, someone shouted, "Look, there's a fire in the palace." Song Yunzi walked a few steps away from Xiao Jingzhao and stopped. "You finally came. Please, Prince, spare him a life for the sake of our grandfather's deep friendship. Let him go." "What are those dead soldiers?" "The victims are displaced, but he is living happily in this Sifang city. The people are living in poverty, but he is still singing and dancing. What's the point of keeping such a waste?" Faced with Xiao Jingzhao's questioning, the princess was speechless. At this time, the fighting subsided, and Xiang Yang came to Xiao Jingzhao and whispered something. The ministers on the side looked at the flames in the palace, and Du Zhong led the way and said, "Let's ask someone to open the palace gate. You are all civil officials. The princess can go alone for this matter. Go back and wait for news." Song Yunzi's mouth twitched. To show loyalty, it is naturally not just talk. Xiao Jingzhao asked the civil officials to leave. Seeing that the burning place in the palace was where the emperor lived, at this critical moment, everyone wanted to know what happened in the palace. Under the gaze of the crowd, Song Yunzi walked towards the palace gate. As the eldest princess, for the sake of the more than 100 people in the princess's mansion, she had to put down her pride in the face of the enemy. Her legs seemed to be filled with lead, and every step she took a lot of effort. Her gorgeous clothes formed a sharp contrast with the corpses lying on the ground in the distance. Her mother was still in the palace, and she didn't know how Xiao Jingzhao would deal with her relatives. She felt helpless and sad. When the palace gate opened, the palace maids and eunuchs were in a mess, shouting the fire broke out. It was getting darker and the dew was heavier. The night wind blew into the house from the window. Zhang Shuyu looked at the hourglass and it was already the end of the Wei hour. Puff. With a light sound, the candle flame burst into a flower. Just when Zhang Shuyu was thinking that this was a good omen, the sound of footsteps on fallen leaves came from outside the window. Then Gao Mu's voice rang out, "Miss, the big thing is done." Zhang Shuyu was refreshed and her sleepiness disappeared. "How many casualties did the soldiers have?" Zhang Shuyu sat up straight. Kang Yun's head squeezed to the window from the side and answered, "I have carefully checked, and the most casualties are the Jinyi and the death squad. The one in the palace. He set himself on fire, along with the Queen Mother. The entire Qianqing palace was burned beyond recognition," Gao Mu answered before Zhang Shuyu asked. Some court officials and the princess welcomed the prince into the palace. The injured soldiers were carried to the imperial hospital. The prince won a great victory. Miss can rest now. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 130. Zhang Shuyu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that Du Mansion's trip was not in vain. With the eldest princess coming forward, it would be much smoother for Xiao Jingzhao to sit on the dragon throne. After a hard night, you guys should go back to your house and rest. Feeling sleepy, Zhang Shuyu yawned and said to Gao Mu and Kang Yun. The next morning, Zhang Shuyu failed to get up on time. Because of what happened last night, the private school was on vacation for a few days, so Nangang Ziyu let Sushui play in the courtyard. Nangang Ziyu sat on a wooden chair in the garden and watched Sui Sui chasing rabbits on the grass. He picked off a leaf and played with it in his hand. But my uncle's safety was in my heart. There was a big chaos in the palace last night, and the master uncle could have taken advantage of the chaos and ran out of the palace. This morning he went to the Donghua gate to have a look. Some people said that a palace maid and a eunuch ran out of the palace last night, but the prince's people did not stop them. Even this morning, the guards guarding the palace gate only let people out but not in. Zhang Shuyu didn't walk out of the courtyard until noon. She took back the medicine powder package distributed to everyone and asked Qiuju to share the reward with everyone. "Miss, you overslept and didn't notice. This servant went out shopping this morning and went to Donghua Gate specifically. The prodigal thing in the palace was burned beyond recognition. I heard that the Queen Mother also died in the fire to save him. It was the eldest princess who personally escorted the bones to the imperial mausoleum." Mayer stuffed the silver into her purse and vividly described the scene at the palace gate. Lanner was still satisfied after hearing this. She asked curiously, "During the fighting last night, there was a river of blood visible at the palace gate?" "No, the entrance to the palace was washed clean without a trace of blood. No one knows how many people died last night. Some people say that the commander-in-chief of the western suburbs camp knew the current affairs and surrendered to the prince's command on the spot. No one died. Some people also say that the harem concubines took advantage of the chaos and sneaked out of the palace disguised as palace maids, taking away a lot of property." When Zhang Shuyu heard this, she quickly stopped Meyer from continuing. "Everyone was delayed in sleeping last night. Go to bed early tonight. Don't mention the matters in the palace again in the future." "Miss is not going to the hospital today," Lanner asked and then said, "Miss also slept late last night, so I will go to the kitchen to bring food." Mayer and Lanner left, and Zhang Shuyu walked towards the garden. The branches in the garden are covered with golden osmanthus, and the rich fragrance makes people feel relaxed and happy. When Nangang Ziyu saw Zhang Shuyu walking towards him, he pointed at Sushui, who was stroking the rabbit on the grass. Zhang Shuyu walked over and sat on the wooden chair opposite him. "Let him play. It's finally a day off. Why don't you go to the gambling house today?" "I've already gone out. There is no one in the gambling house. Everyone has gone to Donghua Gate." Zhang Shuyu glanced at the ravaged leaves on the ground, raised her eyebrows and asked, "Are you worried about Uncle Lin?" "Well, I've been to the palace gate, but I can't get out. There are so many maids and eunuchs in the palace, and I can't find a way to find out the whereabouts of my uncle. I believe he is fine. It was the Qianqing Palace that caught fire last night. The clean rooms are usually in remote locations." Xiao Jingzhao looks indifferent. "He is not a murderer." Nangang Ziyu changed her sitting position, her fox eyes slightly curved. "Do you know him well?" "No, I believe he will not kill innocent people indiscriminately." Nangang Ziyu chuckled. "The stone slab at the entrance of the palace has traces of being washed away. There is no change in imperial power without bloodshed." Seeing Nangang Ziyu looking at her intently, Zhang Shuyu realized belatedly why she always spoke for him today. Thinking about it carefully, I was right. Not to mention the change of dynasties, even when the princes of the past generations fought for the throne, they would not show mercy when they killed each other. I am not speaking for anyone, these things are true in any era. You really don't want to go to the medical clinic today? Nangang Ziyu stopped immediately and quickly changed the subject. I won't go today. I'll go tomorrow. Zhang Shuya shook her head. In the palace. In a remote palace, a grey-faced figure walked out of the corner. As soon as I poked my head out, I saw a man carrying a medicine box walking towards me. Eunuch Lin, you are dressed like this. The fake eunuch Suan was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped when he saw the knife maker, Eunuch Lin, transformed into the clothes of the imperial hospital. Lin Miaoxiao looked around. This was a palace that had been abandoned for a long time. No one came, so he quickly walked in. Remember, from today on, I am not Eunuch Lin, and you are not Xiao Anzi. I am the doctor of Taiyuan Hospital, and you are the apprentice of Taiyuan Hospital. Lin Miaoxiao said as he opened the medicine box, took out a set of clothes for an apprentice from the Imperial Hospital and threw them to Suan, quickly change into them. Happiness came so suddenly, Suan said in disbelief, really, I am no longer a little eunuch. Stop being so nagging, quickly change your clothes and follow me to the hospital to help. You stop taking the medicine. In less than half a year, your man will still be as handsome as ever. Can I really do that? Won't the steward of the Ministry of Internal Affairs discover the villain? Now the palace is in chaos. Last night, masters and slaves from every palace escaped from the palace. Who would pay attention to whether you are Xiao Anzi or an apprentice from the Imperial Hospital? Besides, after the new emperor ascends the throne, the affairs of the palace may change, and the name will be re-registered. You just need to stay with me. Su An's eyes turned red. Master, please bow to me, my disciple. With a pop sound, Su An knelt down. Lin Miaoxiao quickly stretched out his hand to support him. Silly boy, the ground hasn't been swept for a long time. Get up quickly. There are many soldiers lying in the Imperial Hospital. It's a good time for you and me to fish in troubled waters. Su An nodded with tears in his eyes. Okay, I will listen to Master. Even if I find out that I am going to be beheaded, I will not even blink. There was no one else in the hall, so Su An took off all his clothes in no time. Lin Miaoxiao looked up and saw the wound on his arm. You were burned. Su An shook his head. It's okay. Last night, in order not to arouse the suspicion of the patrolling Jinyue, I turned around and pretended to put out the fire, and I was accidentally burned. Lin Miaoxiao looked guilty. You are so young, and you risk being beheaded for me. Master is sorry for you. Put on your clothes quickly, Master will take you to the Imperial Hospital to apply medicine. Master, I am already past the age of tying my hair, and I am not young anymore. Master has treated me with great kindness. I am already working there, so it's just a small favor. Su An shook open the clothes of the apprentice in the Imperial Hospital and found that there was no underwear inside. He bent down to pick up his underwear, but Lin Miaoxiao stopped him. Don't take it, just go back like this, I'll help you find the lining later. The eunuch's clothes are all issued uniformly by the palace, and if they are discovered, it will be hard to explain. Fortunately, Su An is thin, and after putting on the clothes and tying the belt, there is really no difference from the outside. Only Su An felt that the cool breeze from the hem of his robe rushed up as soon as he took a step. Master, let me carry the medicine box. Su An took 2 quick steps and took the medicine box from Lin Miaoxiao. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cup and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 131. Along the way, the palace maids and eunuchs they met were all busy with their own work, and no one noticed their whereabouts. The Imperial Hospital could not accommodate so many injured soldiers, and the palaces closest to the Imperial Hospital were all put to use. The Imperial doctors in the entire Imperial Hospital were busy saving people. Lin Miaoxiao and Su An entered a side hall, and the two lowered their heads and began to bandage the soldiers' wounds in an orderly manner. The room was filled with the smell of blood, but none of the injured soldiers groaned. Lin Miaoxiao was better at treating external injuries than the Imperial doctors. In less than 2 hours, all the injured soldiers in the side hall were treated. Just when Lin Miaoxiao was about to slip out to find underwear for Su An, a serious-looking soldier came in from outside the hall. Those who are willing to stay in the Imperial Hospital, come and register, and write down what you are good at. If you don't want to, you can leave on your own, the soldier said and put the book in his hand on the desk in front of the window. There were already pens and ink on the desk. Su An was overjoyed, put away the medicine box and went over. He didn't read much, but he had no problem with reading and writing. Lin Miaoxiao grabbed him and said in a low voice, "Don't be in a hurry, wait a while before going." Su An understood and stopped immediately. The first person to sign was too eye-catching. He was so excited that he didn't think of this. Fortunately, there were not only doctors from the Imperial Hospital present today, but also some doctors from outside the palace. After everyone in the room signed and left, Lin Miaoxiao and Suan walked over calmly. Lin Miaoxiao wrote his name and wrote that he was good at trauma. The guard raised his eyes and raised his eyebrows slightly. How many years of experience have you been a doctor? More than 10 years. Lin Miaoxiao glanced at Suan's crooked handwriting and lowered his eyes slightly. He was good at more than just trauma. If he wanted to take Suan on this path, only trauma was easy. The guard put away the booklet, looked at Lin Miaoxiao deeply, and walked out quickly. Within a day, the affairs of the palace were quickly taken over. Xiao Jingzhao's deployment was very thorough, and Lin Miaoxiao admired him very much. As night fell, the palace was still brightly lit. Suan helped Lin Miaoxiao spread the bedding, turned around and sat on the edge of the bed opposite. Master is really as good as a god, and I can sleep well tonight. Lin Miaoxiao was also very satisfied. Today, he and Suan were assigned to a single room. Don't be too happy too early. After these few days are over, you have to continue reading and writing. The apprentices of the Imperial Hospital also have assessments. Master, don't worry. I actually studied for a few years, but I haven't practiced calligraphy for a long time. When I was working in the Qianqing Palace, I secretly glanced at the memorials on the imperial desk and recognized all the words on them. Suan was full of confidence. Outside the imperial study, the swaying shadows of the trees were dimly illuminated by the palace lanterns, and patrolling guards passed by from time to time. In the imperial study, Xiao Jingzhao wrote furiously with one hand. Master, take a rest. You haven't closed your eyes for a day and a night. I'll call the imperial physician now. Xiangyang was waiting for the pen and ink, and saw that the master's injured arm was stained with light blood again. Xiao Jingzhao put down the wolf hair brush in his hand, his eyes deep. Don't call the imperial physician, we haven't figured out who can be used and who can't. Xiang Song will come back with the golden wound medicine and bandage it later. The imperial study has been cleaned up, and the bed at the back has been brand new. Xiao Jingzhao plans to live in the imperial study temporarily. Inside and outside are all his own people. The palace maids and eunuchs have been arranged by the new chief steward to the palace not far away. Without Xiao Jingzhao's order, they are not allowed to get close. Xiao Jingzhao, who was extremely tired, fell asleep as soon as his head touched the pillow. Xiangyang looked out the window, hesitating whether to call the palace maids in to help the master undress. Thinking that it was inconvenient for others to know about his master's injury, he gently took off Xiao Jingzhao's boots, put his legs on the bed and covered him with a quilt. Mother, is Dad thinking about Sui Sui now? Sui Sui stayed in Zhang Shuyu's arms and refused to go to sleep. Nangong Ziyu sat patiently beside him, sipping tea, watching Sui Sui pestering Zhang Shuyu with questions. Occasionally, a smile appeared on his handsome face. The night wind blew, and bursts of fragrance came. Zhang Shuyu pinched her eyebrows and said, Sui Sui, go back to the room with Uncle Nangong and sleep. Your father is busy and has no time to miss you. That doesn't matter. When Dad is done with his work, he will miss me. No, he will miss us. Ahem. Nangong Ziyu choked on the tea. He coughed twice and stood up. It's getting late. Sui Sui should go back to the room with Uncle. Your mother has to go to the clinic tomorrow. Well, mother should rest early too. Sui Sui stretched out her tender little hand and stroked her mother's face. Nangong Ziyu and Sui Sui had just left when Xiuju walked in from outside. Miss, Gao Mu is back. Do you want to see him now? Let him in. Zhang Shuyu sat down and gathered the thin cloak on her shoulders. Miss Gao Mu entered the room and bowed. Tell me, are there any unfavorable words outside? Miss, no, in the afternoon, I saw the patrolling city guards changed their clothes, they should be the people brought by the prince. The people on the street are still the same as before, there is no panic or chaos, and the people in the tea house are even discussing when the new emperor will ascend the throne. Zhang Shuyu raised her eyebrows slightly, is this what everyone wants? This is what I saw. Miss, there is someone outside the door asking to see you. At this time, Lanner's voice sounded outside the flower hall. Qiuju hurried out and asked, it's already this hour, can you introduce yourself? No, he just said that the young lady will know when she sees him. Will I accompany the young lady to the hall? Gao Mu looked alert. Qiuju also followed her to the hall. Guard Xiang. Looking at the person who came in, Gao Mu was surprised. Xiang Song was the personal guard of the prince, and he should be guarding the prince at this time. Zhang Shuyu frowned slightly and asked directly, why did he send you here? She felt a little uneasy in her heart. Xiang Song bowed and saluted, Miss, the master is injured, and I took the initiative to come to ask for help. Please, for the sake of Master Sui Sui, follow me to the palace. Wait for me for a while, Gao Mu will prepare the carriage. Looking at Zhang Shuyu leaving a word and turning to walk inside, Xiang Song breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that Miss Zhang was a fairy reincarnated and a kind person. How could she ignore Master Sushui's father? Zhang Shuyu walked back to the room quickly, closed the door and flashed into the space. She quickly packed a medical bag, put it on her shoulder and left the space. Miss, will I go with you? Zhang Shuyu lifted the door curtain and Qiuju asked. Let's go together. The master and servant went out of the door, and Gao Mu had already harnessed the carriage and waited outside. There were several men in black standing next to the carriage. They should be Xiao Jingzhao's secret guards. The carriage came to the palace gate and knocked on the side door. A guard opened the door to check. Xiang Song took out the sign in his hand and flashed it. The guard made a gesture and the carriage went straight in. The carriage went in and the side door closed again. Under the cold moonlight, a black shadow flew down from a big tree in the distance, and disappeared in the vast night after a few rises and falls. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 132. In the princess's mansion. The palace lanterns under the corridor were replaced with white covers. The night wind blew, and the white lanterns swayed under the corridor, which was desolate. Although there was no word meeting written on the lampshade, from the layout of the courtyard and the plain clothes of the servants and maids, anyone could see that the princess's mansion was mourning for the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. In a side courtyard, the former eldest Princess Song Yunzi was wearing a plain white dress, and her black hair was tied up with only a white jade hairpin. Her delicate face was eclipsed, without the bright and beautiful style of the past, as if she had aged several years overnight. She sat steadily in front of the small table, occasionally looking up at the window, as if waiting for something. Princess, please be patient. Things have come to this point and cannot be changed. You should go back to your room and rest. The nanny who served her personally saw that the princess had been sitting for almost an hour, and advised distressedly. Song Yunzi's eyes were sore, and a line of tears slid down. Mammy, please call me madam from now on. The new emperor will ascend the throne soon, and I am no longer the eldest princess. Song Yunzi knew that this was the best outcome, but she had an unspeakable emotion in her heart. Xiao Jingzhao asked her to send her mother and brother to the imperial mausoleum, and the concubines in the harem were sent to guard the imperial mausoleum. Xiao Jingzhao told her that everything would remain the same, which meant that the princess's fiefdom would remain the same, which was already a good treatment for her. If it were someone else, she might be sent out of the capital, or even killed. Mammy saw that the princess she had watched grow up had changed overnight, and she couldn't help crying. Mammy stepped forward and replaced the tea on the tea table with calming tea, then stepped back and stood silently with her hands hanging down. Princess, the guards want to see you. The crisp voice of a maid sounded outside the door. Come in. As soon as the words fell, a guard in night clothes came in and knelt on one knee, reporting to the princess, a carriage just entered the palace. Song Yunzi's eyes lit up. Did you see clearly if there was anyone in the carriage? The carriage went directly into the palace gate, and I couldn't see clearly. Quickly tell the others to keep a close eye on each palace gate and make sure to see who is in the carriage leaving the palace. I understand. The guard stood up and clasped his fists. Seeing the guard leave, the nanny advised gently, Madam, please rest. You haven't slept for a day and a night. If you continue like this, your body will not be able to bear it. Even if you find them, you have to take care of yourself. The nanny followed Song Yunzi's wishes and changed her name to call her Madam. Song Yunzi shook her head. The emperor's brother is incompetent, but he and I are born of the same mother. His 2 sons are missing, and I have the responsibility to raise them. Now they are uncertain whether they are alive or dead. I must know their whereabouts to feel at ease. When the harem was in chaos, the little princes born by 2 concubines disappeared. Song Yunzi asked the concubines and palace maids who went to the imperial mausoleum, but no one knew the whereabouts of the little princes. The maid who served said that the little prince had fallen asleep. When she heard the exclamation outside, she went out to see. When she returned, the little prince on the bed was gone. The nanny sighed and said, Madam has some friendship with the prince. I think he will not hurt innocent people. Song Yunzi's eyes flashed with a chill, and she snorted coldly, it's different now. Keeping the son of the previous emperor is always a threat to him. Who knows where he will take him? The carriage entered the palace, and Zhang Xiu lifted a corner of the curtain and looked out. There was a palace lantern at intervals along the corridors in the palace, and the corridors of the palace were also brightly lit. Although the scenery in the palace was not clear, under the soft light, the mythical beasts on the corners of the roofs in the distance were vaguely visible. Occasionally, a few patrolling guards walked by the corridors of the palace, and everything was in order. The carriage stopped after about a cup of tea. Miss, please get off the carriage. Kyoja took the bag from Zhang Xiu's hand and habitually helped Zhang Xiu. The master and servant got off the carriage and saw that the rest of the black-clothed men had disappeared. Xiang Song bowed and made a gesture of invitation. The imperial study is still in front, please move. Miss, go ahead, I'll wait here. Gao Mu stood beside the carriage and said. Zhang Xiu nodded slightly and walked forward. Kyoja turned back and gestured to Gao Mu, meaning that he should sit in the carriage and wait. Gao Mu felt warm in his heart, grinning, but his body did not move at all. On the way here, Gao Mu had already asked Xiang Song. When he learned that the prince had only skin injuries, his heart fell back into his stomach. The guards outside the imperial study saw Xiang Song leading people in, and hurriedly stepped back to the left to make way. Xiang Song raised his hand to push open the half-closed door, and what came into view was a floor-standing candlestick with jade carvings and dragon patterns in the room. There was only a golden Nanmu desk and bookshelf in front, and a 6-panel double-sided embroidered screen stood behind. The screen was embroidered with rich peonies, and at first glance it looked like a cluster of flowers. Xiang Yang in the inner room heard the footsteps and came out to greet him. After greeting, he lowered his voice and said, the master was too tired and fell asleep without taking off his clothes. Where is he injured? Zhang Xiu asked directly. On the arm, the subordinates have simply bandaged it. Miss Zhang came at the right time. Please help the prince to see if he needs stitches. Zhang Xiu looked at Xiang Song, you come to light the lamp. Then she strode towards the inner room. Kyoja rolled her eyes at Xiang Yang and followed him. Xiang Yang, that thing hasn't been resolved yet? Xiang Song hurriedly went to get the candlestick. The light in the room was indeed not bright enough. Ignoring the luxurious decorations and ornaments in the room, Zhang Xiu looked at the bed, only to see the gauze curtains of the bed gathered on both sides, and a handsome face jumped into her eyes. The handsome face like a sculpture in deep sleep is like a sleeping lion, which makes it impossible to associate it with a person who shakes the country and kills decisively. Xiao Jingzhao's sword-like eyebrows were slightly frowned, perhaps he dreamed of something difficult. In a corner of the room, the hollow bronze incense burner was emitting green smoke, which was the smell of calming incense. The thin quilt was not covered tightly, and Xiao Jingzhao's black robe was exposed. One of his arms was placed on the outside of the bed. Zhang Shiyu's sense of smell was extremely sensitive, and she smelled a faint smell of blood in the air. Soon, Xiang Song brought 2 candlesticks, and the room suddenly became bright. Zhang Shiyu looked down and saw a darker color on the sleeve of Xiao Jingzhao's arm outside the bed. It was soaked in blood. Seeing the young lady squatting down in front of the bed to check the wound, Kyoja quickly put the bundle on the table beside the bed, opened the bundle and prepared. Scissors. Zhang Shiyu whispered softly, and Kyoja handed over the scissors skillfully. Xiang Song brought the candle closer. Xiang Yang stretched his neck to look into the room like a child who had done something wrong. Seeing Zhang Shiyu cut a few times, the brocade clothes that the master had just changed this morning were missing a sleeve. Xiang Yang felt pain but dared not speak out, he quietly retreated. He had to go to the clothing bureau to see if the daily clothes made for the master were made. The palace managers were cleaned up, and the managers of the clothing bureau measured Xiao Jingzhao's size. In addition to making dragon robes, shoes and socks, daily clothes were also busy. Zhang Shiyu frowned slightly at the hideous wound, and looked at Xiao Jingzhao who was sleeping, with mixed feelings. On the strong arm, the wound was 2 inches long, and the red flesh was slightly turned outward. Disinfection, dressing, gel wound patch. Watching Zhang Shiyu's skillful movements in one go, the turned-out wound was covered by a transparent tape and restored to its original state. Xiang Song even forgot to take out the gold wound medicine he bought. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 133. Thinking that Xiao Jingzhao didn't have time to rest in bed, Zhang Shiyu took out gauze and bandaged the outside of the wound again. Remember, he can't use force with his hands. The gel won't stick to it. It only takes 3 days for the wound to heal. If the wound splits with force, it will have to be sutured next time. Zhang Shiyu stood up, gently lifted Xiao Jingzhao's injured arm and put it away, then pulled the quilt to cover him. Perhaps it was because taking care of her over the years had become a habit, so Zhang Shiyu put down the gauze curtain. She turned around and took out the medicine from the bag, explaining how to use it while taking it. This is all trauma medicine. After 3 days, gently remove the transparent patch and then change the dressing. After changing the dressing, simply wrap it with gauze. If you have a fever, just ask the imperial physician to prescribe antipyretic decoction. No, girl, are you ignoring the master? Xiang Song blurted out in excitement. Seeing Zhang Shiyu was stunned, he changed his words, don't get me wrong, girl. I said that the people in the palace are complicated. Who knows if there are still evil spirits who want to harm the master? It would be safest for me to pick the girl up and bring him into the palace to change the master's medicine. Qiuju was furious. The young lady hadn't had a good rest for the past 2 days. This trip back was in the middle of the night. The young lady in her family has to build a flower house and throw hydrangeas to attract a son-in-law. She glared at Xiang Song angrily, Miss, I want you to change the dressing yourself. Why should I bother my lady with such a simple thing? Girl, calm down. I am clumsy. I am afraid that it will affect my master's recovery. Isn't the wound bleeding just because I bandaged it? Xiang Song explained with a smile on his face, neither angry nor annoyed. Zhang Shiyu looked at Xiang Songbu as if he was lying. She could guess what was going on in the palace now. Okay, I will go back to the palace to change the dressing in 3 days. Xiang Song couldn't hide the smile on his lips, and he followed the two of them outside. Thank you, miss. If it's convenient, can you bring Mr. Sushui into the palace with you in 3 days? Master misses him. Xiang Song took a quick step forward and bowed diligently, looking like a qualified eunuch in charge. As soon as she reached the door, Zhang Xiu suddenly remembered someone and paused slightly. There is a knife maker in the palace named Lin Miaoxiao. He is trustworthy. Please ask the guards to help me find out. It is a troubled time in the palace now. It is inconvenient for Sui Sui to show up. I will see you Sui Sui after he has smoothed everything in the palace. Late. Xiang Song naturally understood who Zhang Xiu was referring to. Don't worry, girl. I will find the knife maker Lin Miaoxiao. The girl said that he is trustworthy. Now is the time to employ people, and the master will definitely use him. The palace management has been arranged in place, and everything will be smoothed out soon. Xiang Song smiled like a dog and didn't care about Qiu Ju's displeased expression at all. Everyone was on their own. Xiang Song understood her mood. Now and then, the master used to be the heir apparent, and Miss Zhang acted her own way and had nothing to do with her master. The master now has a different identity, and the girl is secretly helping the master. There is still a year between the two of them. As long as he creates more opportunities for the two of them, there will always be a place for Miss Zhang in this huge harem. Zhang Xiu nodded with satisfaction. She didn't know that Xiang Song had already performed a grand ceremony in his heart. Xiang Song personally sent Zhang Xiu and others out of the palace. After watching the carriage disappear from sight, Xiang Song turned around and returned to the palace. When they entered the palace, there was still a bright moon in the sky. At this moment, the moon hid behind the clouds, and the sky seemed to be covered with a curtain. Under the night, several ghostly black figures followed the carriage in the distance. It wasn't until the carriage entered Zhang Mansion that the black shadow turned around and disappeared into the night. After Xiang Song returned, he immediately asked someone to inquire about Lin Miaoxiao's whereabouts. Then he stayed by the bed and took a nap, occasionally probing his master's forehead with his hand. An hour passed, and when he saw that his master's body temperature had not changed, the stone in Xiang Song's heart fell to the ground. That night, Xiao Jingzhao slept restlessly. He dreamed of a dispute in the court, and some ministers accused him of treason and usurping the throne. He dreamed that he was furious with the courtiers. The woman's body fragrance drifted across his nose, and some courtiers sent countless beauties to the palace in order to please him. Seeing that the beauty was about to throw herself into his arms, he raised his hand to refuse. As soon as he raised his arm, a chilling feeling hit him, and he woke up with a jolt. Opening his eyes, he saw that his raised arm was still hanging in the air. "Where are my sleeves?" "Master, don't move. Miss Zhang said that if your wound opens again, it will have to be sutured." Xiang Song quickly caught the master's arm and put it down carefully. "Miss Zhang? Has she been here?" Xiao Jingzhao said, and cast his eyes on the neatly bandaged arm again, and a strange emotion flashed through his heart. Xiang Song quickly pulled the quilt to cover him. "It was Miss Zhang who I invited without my permission. Although there are many imperial doctors in the palace, I don't dare to believe any of them. The girl told me, don't catch cold, don't exert yourself, and you have to take good care of yourself. It will take more than 10 days. Xiang Song knew that his master did not listen to the doctor's advice, so he deliberately exaggerated. "No, the country cannot live without a king for a day. Tomorrow we will announce the change of dynasty to the world, and the autumn examination is imminent," Xiao Jingzhao said, and stood up with one hand. Xiang Song couldn't resist his master, so he had to wait for him to change his clothes. At this time, the guard sent out to look for Lin Miaoxiao saw Xiao Jingzhao get up and put his head in front of the window to report, "There was a knife maker named Lin in the clean room, but he has disappeared now." "I know, Let's keep searching. Xiang Song waved his hand. The guards retreated and Xiao Jingzhao looked at Song. Is there an old friend you know in the palace? No, it's Miss Jiang's old friend. He might have left the palace during the chaos. It's a pity that I couldn't find Lin Miaoxiao. Xiang Song was very upset. He had said too much. Princess's mansion. Several shadows crossed the wall and went directly into the courtyard. What? A woman was sent out of the palace in the middle of the night. After listening to the report of the man in black, Song Yunzi widened her eyes in disbelief, and all her sleepiness disappeared in an instant. Send people to keep a close eye on the Zhang mansion in turns, and don't let go of a fly. Maybe the person I'm looking for is there. Song Yunzi's bloodshot eyes passed through a trace. She was sure that Xiao Jingzhao was not interested in women. He summoned a woman into the palace for no reason and sent her out overnight. There must be something fishy about it. The next day, Xiao Jingzhao announced to the world that he ascended the throne as emperor and changed the name of Dongling to Sheng, which meant to create a prosperous era and make the people prosperous. Most of the ministers followed the situation and submitted to the emperor, but Prime Minister Wei and his party were ill and refused to go to the palace to obey orders. In the Prime Minister's mansion, Madame Wei could not stand the series of stimulations and fell ill. In the past, when she was sick, she would ask the imperial physician in the palace to come to the mansion for treatment. Now, in this situation, she could only use the doctor in her own mansion. Prime Minister Wei announced to the outside world that he was ill, and the servants in the mansion pretended to go to the outside clinic to invite the doctor to come to the mansion. After a few days, there were at least 8 doctors who came to the Prime Minister's mansion. People who didn't know the truth thought that he was terminally ill. It's all the bad luck brought by that bitch. No one should send food to the ancestral hall today. Let her burn incense to get rid of the bad luck. The eldest lady stood outside Wang Chenyuan and scolded loudly. Kaiyan was so scared that she didn't dare to breathe. Aunt Zhang had been punished to go to the ancestral hall for a few days. She secretly sent food in. Is the eldest lady here to warn her? After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 134. In the ancestral hall, Zhang Jiaojiao was so hungry that she felt dizzy. She drooled as she looked at the offerings on the altar. Kaiyan didn't come to deliver food today, and the maid from the eldest lady's room came over to count the offerings. The eldest lady has said that if there is one offering missing from the altar, Madame Zhang will be beaten with a board. The maid's words were still ringing in her ears. Zhang Jiaojiao collapsed on the futon weakly, and cursed Wei Mingzhou, the unfaithful man, 100 times in her heart. He was always sweet-talking, but when something really happened, he would disappear, not to mention going to the eldest lady to plead for her and say a fair word. What did the queen's death have to do with her? What did the emperor's death have to do with her? The old lady's bedridden state was also her fault. Zhang Jiaojiao wanted to cry but had no tears. She felt that she was more wrong than Doi. She was unwilling and powerless. If she had known this would happen, she would have tied her hair up and become a nun rather than enter the Prime Minister's mansion to be this useless maid. I didn't expect that after careful selection, I and my mother chose a broken ship that was about to sink. Zhang Jiaojiao felt sadder and sadder, and her tears could not stop flowing. No, she would not accept her fate. It would be better to die than to suffer such grievances for a lifetime. She couldn't do it. This was not the result she wanted. Madame Zhang, you can see a layer of incense ash on the table in the ancestral hall. The ancestors of the Wei family were all very particular people when they were alive. The eldest lady asked you to wipe it once to show your piety. When Zhang Jiaojiao was thinking about how to escape from the current predicament, the voice of the maid came from outside the door. She turned her head and saw the maid in the eldest lady's courtyard carrying a bucket of water and placing it at the door of the ancestral hall, and a rag flew towards her. You! Zhang Jiaojiao finally swallowed the curse and quickly reached out to grab the flying rag. Why, don't you want to do it? I'll go and reply to the eldest lady and tell her that Madame Zhang is a princess and can't do this dirty work. The maid's mouth curled slightly, and there was a hint of sarcasm in her eyes. The maids in the mansion all knew that she had changed from a legitimate daughter to a concubine's daughter, and they ridiculed her in a veiled way. When did I say I would not do it? Zhang Jiaojiao did not dare to disobey the eldest lady's wishes, and said silently. Now she is really not as good as the maid in the eldest lady's room. Anyone in this mansion can step on her. Aunt Zhang has worked hard. Remember to light the incense after wiping the dust. The eldest lady will come to check later. Don't think of being lazy, the maid snorted coldly, threw a bunch of words in a yin and yang tone, and strode away arrogantly. Zhang Jiaojiao wanted to curse her mother. She asked her to wipe the dust and then light the incense. When the wind blew, another layer of incense ash would fall on the table. How could this mother punish her? It was obviously a way to torture her. People under the eaves have to bow their heads. Zhang Jiaojiao had no choice. The water in the bucket was just drawn from the well. Seeing the maid walking away, Zhang Jiaojiao lifted the bucket with all her strength, not caring whether her hands were clean or not, and drank the water in big gulps. There was no one else in the ancestral hall. She cursed the Wei family in a low voice while rolling up her sleeves to sweep the dust. In the main courtyard, the eldest lady dismissed the servants and closed the door. Master, I heard that most of the ministers have entered the palace to pay homage to the new emperor, even Du Zhong and Wu Taiwei, two old foxes, have entered the palace. Is it really okay for you not to go? Madame Wei didn't know that the real university scholar was actually the first person to enter the palace to meet the new emperor. Prime Minister Wei pursed his lips tightly, the ravines left by the years were crisscrossed on his face, and a pair of eyes that had been immersed in officialdom for many years flashed a trace of calculation. With thick eyebrows raised slightly, he said with a dignified aura, "Humph. A yellow-haired boy, who has just arrived, I want to see how he can control the court and sit firmly on the throne." The eldest lady saw that her husband was confident, and her worried look gradually disappeared. What the master means is. Prime Minister Wei raised his chin. What do you know as a woman? I have sent someone to the palace to ask for sick leave. If Xiao Jingzhao knows the current situation and sends an imperial doctor to the mansion, or sends someone to send condolences to the mansion, it will not be too late for me to go to the palace. Yes, we just lost our beloved daughter, and he has seized the country. He should compensate us politely. The officials who follow the master are all in important positions. Without the support of the master, he will definitely not be able to move forward. After hearing what Prime Minister Wei said, the eldest lady seemed to have opened up her Ren and Du meridians, and she immediately figured out the connection. Prime Minister Wei's wishful thinking was going well. He secretly sent a message to his colleagues, reported all the problems that had accumulated in the previous dynasty, and asked people to hoard grain privately to raise the grain price. For a while, the people in the capital were immersed in the joy of welcoming the new emperor, while the court was undercurrent, and the court officials frequently met in private. The Ministry of Works was busy repairing the burned Qianqing Palace. The treasury was short of money, and the food and wages of the frontier military camps had not been paid for half a year. The grain price soared overnight, and the people affected by the disaster were even worse off. Xiao Jingzhao looked at the memorials sent to the imperial study like snowflakes. Each one was a problem that needed money to solve. The enthronement ceremony was also being prepared intensively, and the 3 departments and 5 temples were short of money. Xiao Jingzhao responded calmly and carefully reviewed the memorials one by one. The number of problems left over from the previous dynasty was so many that it was astonishing. The size of the hole was beyond Xiao Jingzhao's estimation and preparation. He wrote off the extravagant expenses in the palace. he released more than half of the hundreds of singing girls in the Jiaosifang. Most of them were women from official families who were implicated in family crimes in the past. Xiao Jingzhao pardoned the whole country in advance, removed their slave status, and let them choose where to go. Some women returned to their hometowns, some returned to their old houses to wait for their relatives who had returned after the amnesty, and some of those who stayed behind were unwilling to leave the palace. Other women lost their families and left the palace with the rewards they had received over the years to do small business. Xiao Jingzhao quickly placed his people in various offices with the force of thunder. All the Jinyue were replaced by soldiers trained by him personally, and the remaining soldiers were all placed in the western suburbs camp. Your Majesty, please take a break. I will read the memorials, and Your Majesty will be responsible for reviewing them. Xiang Song saw Xiao Jingzhao raise his hand and pinch his eyebrows tiredly, so he suggested. Xiao Jingzhao put down his hand and nodded slightly, half closing his eyes and waiting for Xiang Song to read the memorial. Xiang Song picked up the memorial in front of him and glanced at it. His face froze, and he quickly put it down and replaced it with another one. After several times, Xiao Jingzhao half closed his eyes and asked in confusion, "What? Don't you recognize me?" "No, no, Your Majesty, look, these, how come they are all petitions to resign and return home to spend their old age, are they really that old?" Xiang Song looked embarrassed and didn't know how to read on. He didn't resign earlier or later, but he handed in the petition as soon as the new emperor came as if he had discussed it. Is this to show off his power to the new emperor? Xiao Jingzhao hooked his thin lips and shouted to the outside, "Send the Dali Temple minister to see you." "Yes, my lord." The guards outside only heard his voice but didn't see him. Xiang Song was confused and didn't understand what the emperor was up to. While he was stunned, the petition in front of him was taken away by the emperor. It's just right to open up the source of the flow, and that will satisfy their wishes. Then why did the emperor summon the Dali Temple minister to see him? Shouldn't you check it before resigning? The clear ones will be clear, and the turbid ones will be turbid. Xiao Jingzhao raised his sword eyebrows slightly, without any worry of being surrounded by enemies. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 135. After a while, Duzhong, the minister of Dali Temple, came quickly. "See you, Your Majesty, long live my emperor." Duzhong's attitude was respectful and he did not underestimate Xiao Jingzhao at all. This was the second time Xiao Jingzhao met Duzhong alone in private. Without courtesy, Du Iking, several ministers have asked to resign and return to their hometowns. Let them go away with a clear conscience. Are you qualified for this? Xiao Jingzhao said and pointed to the folder on the imperial case. Xiang Song understood and quickly picked up the folder and handed it to Duzhong to read. Duzhong. Can he refuse this? None of the people who enter Dali Temple in Xianan are vegetarians. If he doesn't do it, there will naturally be people vying to do it. He quickly flipped through the booklet, which contained people he was familiar with. Without exception, these people are all closely related to the Prime Minister. What? Mr. Du can't stop because of his old feelings. Xiao Jingzhao looked serious, and his cold and majestic aura made Duzhong's heart tremble. Wei Chen obeys your orders. Duzhong was about to kneel down again when Xiao Jingzhao raised his hand and said, without courtesy, "Go ahead. I'll give you 3 days to clean up these people." When Duzhong heard the emperor's words, he felt like his head was spinning. He had to find out so many people in 3 days. If he didn't show his special skills, the new emperor's faction would fail in its first mission. Then he would have failed. It's not far away from returning to my hometown for retirement. Duzhong took the order and left. Xiang Song picked up the rest of the excerpts and continued to read. The sun sets in the west, and the sky is filled with colorful clouds. Zhang Shiyu sent away the last patient and told everyone to pack up and go home early. Qiuju was about to close the door when Nangong Ziyu walked in with a smile on her face. How come Mr. Nangong has time to come here at this time? Qiuju retracted her hand to close the door. Is the girl here? I have important matters to discuss with her. Nangong Ziyu put away her smile, glanced at the room, and said seriously. Miss is changing clothes in the backyard and will be out in a moment. A moment later, when Zhang Shiyu changed her clothes and came out, she was also very surprised to see Nangong Ziyu. Why are you here? What's the emergency? Nangong Ziyu waved her hands quickly. It's not a big deal. The price of grain has doubled today. I have some money in my hand. I am thinking about buying some from the grain merchant and selling it after a while to make a profit on the difference. Zhang Shiyu raised her eyebrows slightly and glared at Nangong Ziyu. Do you know how to do business? Yes. Didn't I tell you that you can make a profit? After saying that, he said with a playful smile, but I don't understand business as you do. No, I discussed it with you as soon as I heard the news. Qiuju curled her lips and said disdainfully, I am not belittling Mr. Nangong. When it comes to business, Our Lady knows best. That's it, your girl is the most powerful. Nangong Ziyu smiled with a doggy look on her face, a bit out of tune. The coronation ceremony of the new emperor is about to take place. What crime do you deserve for driving up food prices? King Gli's voice was lazy and playful. Nangong Ziyu's face suddenly turned pale. I really haven't thought about it that much. No, we can't go against the new emperor. We can't do this business. Seeing that Nangong Ziyu was so frightened, Qiuju couldn't help covering her mouth and snickering. It's not impossible to sell food, but it must be sold at the original price, and you must not take advantage of the situation and make the people worse off. No, Shiyu, what do you mean? If you ask me to buy high and sell low, then I'm not losing money. I might as well buy food and give it to the people outside the city who have been affected by the disaster. Nangong Ziyu had done this before, and Zhang Shiyu admired him for treating money like dirt. There is no need to give it away this time. Just close the gambling house and leave the food buying to me. Just let the shopkeeper of the gambling house be responsible for selling it. For him, you plan to use all the money in your hand to supplement it. Well, who calls me the closest to Sushui? I will also contribute to this matter. When I get back, I will buy you all the money in hand. Grain. Nangong Ziyu heard everyone talking about the new emperor's enthronement ceremony being held in a few days. There was a year between Zhang Shiyu and that person, and Nangong Ziyu understood her approach. The mountain man has his own clever plan. Keep the banknotes in your hand to open a shop and earn money for your wife. Zhang Shiyu teased him. I live in Zhang Mansion and there is no shortage of food and drink. What do I need from a wife? It's nothing. Nangong Ziyu waved her wide sleeves and looked calm. Qiuju. This wooden head can't think of anything else except eating and drinking? The three of them walked out of the shop. Gao Mu and Kang Yun were waiting outside. Girl, it's time to change the dressing today. Zhang Shiyu had just stepped up to walk towards the dismounting stool when she heard Xiang Yang's voice from behind the carriage. The voice was filled with guilt and a bit of timidity. When Qiuju looked over, Xiang Yang quickly lowered his head. Kang Yun, you and Mr. Nangong go back to the palace, and I will go to the palace with Gao Mu and Qiuju. Zhang Shiyu said and nodded towards Xiang Yang, motioning for him to go ahead. Today, Xiang Yang came with a carriage and its driver. When he saw Zhang Shiyu getting on Gao Mu's carriage, he had no choice but to ask the driver to lead the way. Shiyu, shall I accompany you? Nangong Ziyu stepped onto the carriage shaft. Before Zhang Shiyu could answer, Qiuju had an idea and moved to the back of the carriage to give up her seat, and Nangong Ziyu took the opportunity to sit down. Miss, I think it would be better to have Mr. Nangong go with you, so as to prevent others from gossiping about the lady behind your back. After Qiuju said this, Zhang Shiyu also felt that Qiuju was right. Okay, let's go together. But when you see the emperor later, you have to salute, so don't forget it. I don't need to see the emperor. Maybe with luck, I can meet my uncle in the palace. Nangang Ziyu went to his senior brother's place yesterday to inquire, but there was still no news about his uncle. Although he didn't say anything, he was a little anxious in his heart. He even guessed that the fire in the palace might be the work of his uncle, and maybe he had died. Thinking of his uncle's ill-fated life, Nangang Ziyu felt so distressed that he couldn't breathe. The carriage entered the palace. Before it got dark, the palace maids and eunuchs were busy lighting palace lanterns everywhere. The carriage stopped, and Nangang Ziyu jumped off the carriage first. He stepped forward and asked Xiang Yang, "Can I walk around? The roads in the palace are complicated. Don't get lost, young master. I'd better find a palace maid to lead the way for you." At this time, a palace maid happened to pass by with a lantern in her hand, and Xiang Yang hurriedly stopped the palace maid. "Shiyu, go and come back quickly. I'll be back in 2/4 of an hour at most." Hearing Nangang Ziyu calling the girl's maiden name so intimately, Xiang Yang felt very irritating. Seeing Nangang Ziyu walking away with the palace maid, he muttered in his heart, "Could it be that Miss Zhang has an unusual relationship with this person?" These days, except for the morning court, Xiao Jingzhao has been busy in the imperial study. When Zhang Shiyu came to the outside of the imperial study, it was just when the palace maids were delivering the imperial meal. When the newly promoted eunuch chief Ma Yang saw Zhang Shiyu, he felt his eyes light up, and then he bowed and stepped aside. Her eyebrows were as dark as black, her black hair was as elegant as satin, and the beauty mole between her eyebrows was unforgettable. The woman exuded a spiritual aura like the mist of Wushan. Ma Yang had been in the palace for many years and had seen countless beauties in the harem, but this stunning face was the first time he had seen it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 136. See the Emperor. Zhang Shiyu was about to kneel down when a strong big hand held her arm. Qiuju in the back actually knelt down. "No courtesy, there is no need for more courtesy between you and me." The voice was as gentle as jade, as warm as the spring breeze. Ma Yang knew how to serve his master well. Seeing that the emperor treated guests differently, he quickly served tea with his own hands, then wisely exited the imperial study and stood outside the door to wait on him. Judging from the woman's good temperament, even the maid behind her is wearing silk and satin, so she must be of unusual status. Zhang Shiyu was not polite. She disliked the red tape here the most. In her opinion, these were the dross left in the long river of history. She stood up and looked up, her eyes colliding with a pair of deep phoenix eyes. Qiuju was not polite, stood up and stood aside. Xiao Jingzhao is still as handsome and extraordinary, but the difference is that he is wearing a bright yellow robe. There was no trace of injury on his tall figure. His handsome face was set off by the bright yellow robe, and he exuded the aura of a king who looked down on the world. His noble temperament seemed to be innate. Seeing the pretty person standing firm, Xiao Jingzhao withdrew his hand naturally. "It's not too late to change the dressing after eating together," Xiao Jingzhao invited. Zhang Shiyu glanced at the table. The exquisite 3 dishes and 1 soup were more frugal than her. "No, you are still waiting for me to come home." It wasn't that Zhang Shiyu disliked the simplicity of his food, she was accustomed to it year after year and had to wait for her to come home before eating. "It's just 1 meal, so it doesn't matter if he waits." Xiao Jingzhao had the attitude of Zhang Shiyu who couldn't eat without eating. Zhang Shiyu looked at Xiang Yang who was aside. "Nangang Ziyu is waiting for me outside. I can't keep him waiting for a long time." Xiang Yang nodded in agreement, secretly cursing in his heart. No wonder he felt that Sushui's stubbornness was even worse than his master's. It turned out that both of them were stubborn people. Is that the thief? That's all in the past, he's in business now. Zhang Shuyu originally said that Nangang Ziyu was in serious business, but when she remembered that gambling houses were not serious businesses, she omitted the two words. Okay, change the dressing. Xiao Jingzhao couldn't resist Zhang Shuyu in the end, so he walked to the desk and sat down. Zhang Shuyu Luoluo followed generously, and as soon as she raised her hand, Xiang Yang shouted, "Girl, wait a minute." Zhang Shuyu's raised hand paused slightly, and when she looked back, she saw Xiang Yang quickly carrying a delicate tray, which contained the medicine and gauze she had left behind. Help the emperor roll up his robe. It will be much easier for the girl to change her dressing. Xiang Yang smiled, put down the tray and went to help. He was afraid that if he was too late, the girl would cut the scissors with a click, and the master's new robe would lose another sleeve. Xiao Jingzhao seemed to have read Xiang Yang's thoughts. With a look, Xiang Yang retreated. "Qiuju, just come." Zhang Shuyu lifted Xiao Jingzhao's arm and lifted it with her slender fingers. Qiuju stepped forward and held down the robe. Gently peel off the gel patch and the wound heals well. The slender fingers are like onions, applying medicine and bandaging with deft and neat movements. The two of them were so close that Xiao Jingzhao could clearly see Zhang Shuyu's long eyelashes trembling. The beauty mark between her eyebrows seems to have a magical power. It is dazzlingly red and just right, making it unforgettable. When he lowered his head, a snow-like swan neck jumped into his eyes, and a familiar fragrance penetrated his nose. Xiao Jingzhao's Adam's apple rolled up and down and he hurriedly looked away. Just as Zhang Shuyu was bandaging Xiao Jingzhao, a high-pitched announcement sounded outside the door. Xiang Song walked in. "Report to the emperor, there is news from Dali Temple." Xiao Jingzhao did not shy away from Zhang Shuyu. He raised his chin slightly and said, "How much have you been greedy? Report it carefully. The emperor knows things like a god, and the amount is huge." The chief of the temple, the chief registrar, and the recorder, a total of more than 10 people, have been counting for a whole day and haven't finished counting. Seeing that the emperor's eyes were calm, Xiang Song continued, "Master, do ask someone to send a message. After counting tomorrow, he will hand over the account book and all the stolen money will be sent to the treasury." Well, very good. Du Zhong is a ruthless person and can be used. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Let him continue to dig deeper. This was just the beginning. There were so many holes. He had to pull out these giant rats one by one to give the people a veritable prosperous age. This happened to be the last day of the 3-day period, so Du Zhong asked someone to confess and quickly confiscated the stolen money. He was still qualified to be the minister of Dali Temple. Xiao Jingzhao showed a satisfied smile. After bandaging, Zhang Shuyu put down her sleeves, stepped back and said, "The wound will be healed in 3 days. Please take care of yourself, Your Majesty." After saying that, she winked at Qiuju and turned around to leave. "Miss Zhang, wait. I heard that Sui Sui is studying at Genjia Private School. After I clean up the palace in a few days, how about letting Sui Sui study at Taiyuan Academy?" Xiao Jingzhao did not call himself me when talking to Zhang Shuyu. Zhang Shuyu heard his consultative tone. As a member of the 9th 5-year plan, it was impossible for her not to be touched at all when he spoke to her like this. After all, he is Sui Sui's father and should have the obligation to educate his children. Zhang Shuyu thought for a while and said, "I have no objection, but it's best to respect Sushui's wishes. He likes Zhenjingziu's lectures very much, and the learning atmosphere in Genjia Private School is very good. Food is the most important thing for the people. The price of food soared yesterday. There must be someone behind the grain merchants who is adding fuel to the fire. Your Majesty, please check it out." Xiao Jingzhao's starry eyes brightened slightly. "Miss Zhang is right, There are people hiding in the dark and restless. Lin Xiangji will soon bring a large amount of food to the capital. The rats hiding in the dark cannot make big waves. Zhang Xiyu didn't say that she was planning to open a grain store, as that would be like asking for credit. She just wanted to do something meaningful, for the common people and for the sake of Sui Sui. There were countless corrupt officials in the past. If the emperor wants to remove them all, don't say anything difficult. People are in panic. The turmoil in the court is not conducive to the emperor quickly stabilizing the current situation. Zhang Xiyu smiled sweetly and spoke softly, as if she was talking about romantic affairs rather than important court affairs. Xiao Jingzhao has seen Zhang Xiyu's abilities before. He stood up and walked towards Zhang Xiyu. Thank you for everything you have done for me. I will definitely thank you again in the future. Speaking of those moths, I am also very troubled. I wonder what you have to say, girl. It's very simple, let them spit it out on their own, but you have to give them the opportunity to spit it out. How much depends on their sincerity. If the goal is not achieved, the emperor will slowly search for evidence of their corruption. This will give them a chance and give himself time to operate. Zhang Xiyu smiled and said, will the emperor arrest them all and interrogate them? Miss Zhang is right. The decree will be announced tomorrow. Xiao Jingzhao also knew in his heart that he was a bit rough and rude in his treatment of those who asked to resign. Fortunately, Du Zhou knew how to handle the matter, otherwise he would have been called a tyrant before he officially ascended the throne. After being expelled from the palace, she returned with her cub and amazed the whole city. Author, Hanggu. Chapter 137. In the Royal Garden. As dusk falls, the warm lights become brighter and brighter. Nangang Ziyu walked outside a main hall under the leadership of the palace maid. The palace maid felt fond of the charming Nangang Ziyu and introduced every scene in the palace enthusiastically. Master, stay here. In front of you is Qianqing Palace, which is being repaired. Hey! Isn't the main hall in good condition? Where are the repairs? What the young master saw was the front hall, and what was burned down was the back hall, the maid explained patiently, glancing at Nangang Ziyu from time to time with shy eyes. But we have found out who set the fire? Could it be that the late emperor himself felt ashamed of the people of the world and lit the fire on his own? Puff. Nangang Ziyu's unruly demeanor made the palace maid laugh out loud. Young master, it's so interesting. The previous emperor was a man who enjoyed himself, but he was reluctant to die. I heard that the maid on night duty fell asleep and accidentally knocked over the oil lamp. The apse was the bedroom, and the gauze curtains in the room were set on fire. Water from far away could not save the fire nearby. When the water was brought in, it was already a sea of fire. The little palace maid heard from the little eunuch in the royal dining room that the new emperor's royal meal never had more than 10 dishes. The maids and eunuchs were all talking privately. The new emperor was young, handsome, and not greedy for pleasure. He was really a blessing to all people. Nangang Ziyu looked like she suddenly realized it. She glanced around and sighed, oh. So that's it? God can't stand it anymore. It's been punished by God. The little palace maid was so amused by Nangang Ziyu's funny appearance that she covered her mouth and snickered. The young master believes in cause and effect, so he must be a Buddhist. No wonder the young master looks kind. The rainbow fart from the little palace lady did not knock Nangang Ziyu out. He looked towards the brightest light in the distance and deliberately asked randomly, where is that? Did the new emperor admit people into the harem so quickly? Young master has misunderstood. The new emperor is not that kind of person. The harem is all empty. There is the imperial hospital, which is full of injured soldiers. To hospital. A thought flashed through Nangang Ziyu's mind. His uncle knew medical skills, so he wouldn't be admitted to Thai hospital, right? Can I go see the injured soldiers? Nangang Ziyu put away her bohemian expression and said seriously. You can go. Before she finished speaking, and before the little palace maid could lead the way, Nangong Zaya couldn't wait to stride towards the imperial hospital. In the imperial hospital, palace maids and eunuchs came and went in a hurry, carrying food boxes in their hands, and a group of people wearing imperial doctor uniforms shuttled inside. You can smell the aroma of food outside the main hall, which shows that there are many people living inside. Entering the main hall, Nangong Zayu's soles felt like they were oiled, and she quickly blended in with the busy crowd. There were beds made of wooden boards everywhere in the hall, and the soldiers were either sitting or lying down. The air was filled with a faint medicinal smell. Nangong Zayu bypassed the palace maids and eunuchs who delivered the meals and went straight to the imperial doctors. The imperial doctors all wore the same robes, and Nangong Zayu was dazzled and could not see the familiar face. He saw a palace maid and eunuch carrying a food box walking towards a corridor, and he followed her. As he passed the corridor, a hand suddenly pulled him behind a large pillar. "What are you doing here, you little bastard? Uncle Master! Are you not dead?" A familiar voice sounded, and Nangong Zayu cried with joy, and he hugged her excitedly. "Bah, bah, bah! Get out of here! My good life has just begun, don't live or die." Lin Miaoxiao said as he pushed Nangong Zayu's hand away, looked around, and glared at Nangong Zayu pretending to be angry. "Through the light in the distance, I saw that my uncle was wearing imperial doctor's uniform." Nangong Zayu smiled playfully and patted Lin Miaoxiao on the shoulder. "Uncle Master is indeed alive. This dress fits him very well. Uncle Master, you are so prosperous in the palace, why don't you come out of the palace and tell us, so that we worry about you in vain? You're just worrying. Uncle Master has the protective elixir given to me by Girl Zhang. No one can hurt me in the slightest. Look, there are so many injured soldiers here. How can I have time to leave the palace? How are you, Miss Zhang, and Sushui?" "Very good." She is talking to the emperor in the imperial study at the moment. Nangong Zayu didn't even notice that his tone was a bit sour. "Uncle Master, do you plan to stay in the palace forever?" "I have no other plans for the time being. The current emperor has the world in mind, and the injured soldiers have not yet recovered. I cannot stand by and watch." Lin Miaoxiao looked around and saw that no one was coming, so he lowered his voice and said, "Maybe one day Miss Zhang and Sushui will also come to the palace, and I can see them more often." "No, Shuyu will not enter the palace. She likes freedom. The gorgeous palace walls are like a prison to her," Nangong Zayu said firmly. "Forget it, this is not the place to talk. You can go back to where you came from. I still have to go to work. I'm afraid my disciple Suan is impatient. Uncle Master will come out of the palace to see you after finishing his work." For a while Lin Miao patted Nangong Zayu's arm and walked away like a whirlwind. Nangong Zayu looked at her uncle's back and shook her head helplessly, muttering in a low voice, "We accept another disciple, shouldn't we throw him back to the Black Dragon Pond?" When Nangong Zayu walked out of the imperial hospital, the little palace maid was standing at the door, stretching her neck and looking around. Seeing Nangong Zayu appear, she went up to him with an apologetic face. "I'm sorry, the young master just walked too fast, and I couldn't keep up. Fortunately, I waited until the young master came out." The little palace maid sent Nangong Zayu to where Gaomu was waiting. Nangong Zayu took out a piece of silver and stuffed it into the little palace maid's hand. The little maid felt heavy in her hand. She estimated that it was the weight of 10 taels of silver. Apart from thanking him repeatedly, she didn't dare to expect anything. Nangong Zayu stood beside the carriage, talking to Gaomu while looking at the road leading to the imperial study. After a while, she saw a familiar figure coming over. Followed by the guards, Nangong Zayu stepped back. Zhang Shuyu and Kyoja got on the carriage, and Nangong Zayu strode up. After lowering the curtain, Nangong Zayu couldn't hold back the joy in her heart, and said with a smile, "Master Uncle is in the imperial hospital. I said Uncle Lin would be fine,
he is kind, and now the palace is in need of people, it's better to be in the imperial hospital than to be a knife maker, Zhang Shiyu said, taking a round object from Kyoja's hand and playing with it in her hand. What is this? The light in the carriage was dim, and Nangang Ziya couldn't see clearly. The emperor gave Sushui a toy, a ball. That's too stingy. He's the emperor, and he was rewarded with a ball when he entered the palace, Nangang Ziya condemned bluntly. That's right. The emperor loved Kuju in the military camp before. He didn't know that Sushui didn't like that thing at all. Kyoja didn't understand. How could Master Sushui play Kuju? 2 little white rabbits were enough for him to play with. Miss, the emperor just said he wanted to thank you a lot. I'm waiting to see how he thanked you. Zhang Shiyu disagreed, it's just a little help. I can do my best. I never thought of asking him to thank me. At this time in the Prime Minister's mansion. In the main courtyard, the sound of teacups breaking came out.